Hello everyone and welcome back to the Harrison Motorsport YouTube channel. Today's video is going to talk about the 2027 F1 grid, predictions, who's going where, what's going down. Let's get straight into it with the Cadillac team. Now both their drivers, Perez and Bottas, are on their 2-year deals. But we've seen that Cadillac actually might not be the worst team in the grid. So their plans might be to accelerate, They've bought on Perez and Bottas to make sure the team isn't the worst team, to help build the team up and improve the team. But if the team's already doing quite well, you might say, well, let's leave one of these drivers out and bring in some performance elsewhere, as that kind of trade-off isn't as big as anymore. So I think they're going to keep Perez, the race winner, the most recent kind of like top tier experience in Formula One, and get rid of Bottas, who's a little bit past it. Even though he's got that 2-year deal, presumably, I think there are a lot of 1+1 deals, and bring in their boy Colton Herta from Formula 2. He's come second and seventh and top 10 results over the last 5 years in IndyCar. Large American audience, and make sure that kind of American branding goes far by bringing him in, putting him on another 3-year deal alongside Perez for at least another season or two, depending on how well he does. But yeah, I can see them moving one of these drivers on because of how that team looks and its future. They want to make sure that they have a future after Perez and Bottas, and that comes in by bringing in a younger driver who's only 25 compared to mid to late 30s with Perez and Bottas. So Cadillac, Colton Herta, Sergio Perez, confirmed 2027. Above them I got Alpine. We know Alpine, they have Cole Pinto. Drive to Survive has just come out. He doesn't look great in that. He hasn't scored a lot of points. Gasly's done well. They'll also keep on Gasly. Gasly has his contract until 2028, so another 3 years left. Cole Pinto is obviously on that 1-year deal. And they have a lot of rookies. They have Paul Aaron, they have Dunn, they have Miney, they have Mini, they have a lot of talent. But I think the man, Flavio Briatore, we know how ruthless he is. I think he'll try to pull one over on everyone and do what McLaren did to them with their back-to-back F3, F2 winning driver Piastri, and bring in McLaren's reserve driver, back-to-back F2, F3 winning driver Leonardo Fornaroli, who's currently there taking a year off while he kind of does their reserve driver duties. But other people will be like, this guy is elite, he is insanely talented, and he can be our Bortoletto, our kind of Piastri, our Bandman, our young, talented driver, and take us forward into the future. So that's what I predict, a kind of reverse of what happened with McLaren and Alpine a few years ago. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below if you think this is a bit out of there. This isn't the most out there shout. A weird link between the teams, but I think it's a little bit of payback and revenge for a few years ago. And with Aston Martin. And Alonso's getting on a bit. His deal does expire at the end of this year. Although he's a rookie, he's the oldest driver on the grid, and I think that is starting to show. Just a little bit more injuries picking up, a little less kind of enthusiasm about the car and the team, especially with how poor the team has looked with that new Honda engine, and because of the Honda connection, I'm thinking they're going to replace him with Yuki Tsunoda. He's still at Red Bull, but I don't think that will continue past this year because of kind of the results of. I think the results of the team will kind of improve gradually. They have a lot of juniors coming through their F2 and F3 systems in Red Bull, like Solov, etc. They have another guy cutting, Taran, whatever. Yeah, they will get rid of Tsunoda and they will bring in him to Aston Martin and put him alongside Lance Stroll. Now, I usually try and push Lance Stroll out, but I don't think I can do that this year just because he's not going anywhere, is he? I think we have to kind of key on to the fact that until Aston Martin have a race-winning car and he doesn't start winning races, similar to what happens at Red Bull where you had Verstappen leading the team, until we see the driver alongside a Stroll winning races and Stroll's still doing terribly, he won't be going anywhere. That's just a fact. So it's going to be Stroll, and I think Tsunoda. I'm not sure if Tsunoda deserves it. I think Crawford might have been a good candidate here, but I just think that the kind of Honda link with Aston Martin will be a bit too powerful, and Crawford isn't. I mean, I don't back the ownership at Aston Martin to back youth, is the only thing. Um, and we've seen that over the last couple of years with Vettel, with Alonso. So yeah, Aston Martin, Tsunoda, Stroll. Then we have Audi. I don't have any changes for Audi. I think Bortoleto and Hulkenberg is a strong pairing going into 2027. Obviously, you have Hulkenberg, German driver for a German team now. But you also have a young driver, Bortoleto, who could be a world champion one day. So, very strong lineup. And I considered maybe they're making a switch with Hulkenberg for a young driver, but I thought Bortoleto's will only be a third year rookie, so not very a lot of experience. He's shown that he's as fast as Hulkenberg on a given weekend, but he hasn't been consistently outperforming him. So is Hulkenberg's time done yet? I think what we've seen with kind of drivers their career, no. I think he's still got at least another year or two left, especially with the podium win in Britain last year. So for me, they'll stay until 2028. In 2028, their reserve driver, Freddie Slater, he is going to probably have had a year in F3 and then a year in F2 and will be ready for a step up, I believe. So that might be a good year to switch and give Hulkenberg another year to help grow Bortoleto's kind of experience and leadership skills. Then above them, we have the Haas team. They have Ocon currently, who I think is solid and will stay for a while. Although his contract runs out at the end of this year, he's only been at the team for 2 years, so I think they'll extend him. He has been fine, you know. He's been outperformed a little bit by Behrman, but I think Behrman's going to move on, and we'll see where he lands later on. But I think they're going to replace him with another Ferrari Junior, like they did with Behrman, bringing him on, and get Rafael Kamara in, who recently dominated the F3 field in 2025 and is an F2 for 2026 and is looking good to do the same thing there. You know, he's been setting great times in the test sessions. He's en route to being an F1 driver. Brazilian, still quite young. I think he's 20 to 21, so in that age group where he's got a little bit more experience. He obviously has that testing and sim experience with the Ferrari team being in their reserve driver program. So yeah, I think Kamara at Haas makes sense. They have some Brazilian links when they used to have the Fittipaldi brothers in there too. So yeah, Kamara at Haas with Ocon. Then RB, no changes. Lawson, Lindblad. You have drivers coming through their program, like Solov I mentioned, who look very, very good. But will they perform enough this year to put them in for next year? I don't think that will happen. You know, you have Hedger stepping up into the F1 seat. I think as long as he does fine, they'll keep him there for at least 2 seasons. And because they want to kind of train Lindblad up. If Hedger doesn't do great, what sense does it make to do the same thing with Lindblad that they've done to Hedger? If Lindblad has a good season and Hedger doesn't, would you do exactly the same thing what you've done with Tsunoda? And it just kind of continues the cycle. And Red Bull need to break the cycle by committing to a driver long term. And that means don't change your driver lineups for at least 2 years, you know? And that's what I think they'll do this year with Lawson and Lindblad staying at RB, getting a bit more experience. Things might change in the future. Both of these drivers are only on their 1-year deals, so I could see Lawson leaving eventually, similar to what we're seeing with Albon, with Gasly, with Sainz, with all these drivers coming through that second team that ultimately didn't make it to the top team, going elsewhere on the grid or leaving the sport, like saw with Hartley, with Kvyat. But yeah, I think they'll stay for 2027 for RB with Lawson and Lindblad. Williams, though, they have 2 great drivers, Albon and Sainz. Both of them have their deals finishing this year. But I think Williams will be able to retain that talent, you know. Albon is obviously their number 1 driver. And clearly, after last year, they're the best team on the grid. That might not be the same after this year, but deals will start to get signed and negotiated halfway through this year. And kind of expectations and trends will follow over the last few years. So you have James Bowles in charge of that team. You have that team growing a lot from last kind of a clear upwards trajectory with that kind of key power unit in Mercedes. A lot of growth going on there. A lot of finance being available to them, what they didn't have previously. So I think they'll be able to keep Albon and Sainz. Albon especially because he's got not a lot of options elsewhere. I think Sainz being a race winner as well might look elsewhere, but he's going to be leaving one bad situation for another equally bad situation. He could go to like one of the newer teams like Audi or Cadillac, but what does that really change for him? Is he in a better situation there than he is on another 2-year deal going until 2028 at Williams? I'm not so sure. I don't think Williams can take him where he needs to or he wants to be, winning races. But I still think it's the best place for now to make sure that he's in contention for the next kind of top seat when it comes up at one of these top 4 teams. So that's Williams, Albon, Sainz. Yeah, I think there is still a little bit of connection between Sainz and Audi, given his father raced for them in rally, but not strong enough for me. Then I have the Mercedes team, and no changes here. You have 2 great drivers. You've got Russell, who's on a deal until 2027, and Kimi still runs out this year, 2026. They're obviously going to want to keep Kimi. When they looked at getting Max Verstappen in, it wasn't Kimi that was going to be moving away for them to bring in Verstappen. It was going to be Russell. They're not going to kick off Russell midway through a deal. So, for me, Russell will continue because he's got the contract until 2027. But they also keep Kimi Antonelli as their next world beater, their next Lewis Hamilton, their next driver that's going to win everything for them. Then we have Ferrari, and I think Hamilton will retire. If Ferrari don't look competitive, which they do seem to be doing a lot of innovative stuff this year, but they don't look like they have an amazing power unit. The other teams are very competitive themselves. Two of them have the kind of best power unit in the Mercedes one, so I think there's a lot of kind of expectation over McLaren and Mercedes. But yeah, if he's still having a difficult season, he might call it quits. He's got a lot of stuff going on in his personal life, a lot of other career plans. So yeah, I could see him sticking around for another 3 or 4 years again. But I could also see him calling it quits. So yeah, for me, he'll move on. They'll keep Leclerc, the longest contract on the grid, until 2029, so they have him at least for another 4 years. But they'll bring in Behrman. Now, Behrman showed last year that he's very consistent, very fast driver. He beat his team at Ocon consistently, and Ocon's a good midfield driver. So yeah, Behrman gets the promotion to Ferrari. Obviously, they might look at other candidates. They might consider Sainz. They might consider some of these other drivers throughout the grid. But I think the young drivers that they'd want have too strong links to their current teams to be pulled away. Apart from Behrman, who is their driver still, in their program still, although he's a Haas, they will just bring him back. That makes sense to me. Bring Behrman to Ferrari. He might struggle a bit. It is difficult to perform at that team, especially when that team's dominated by Leclerc. But give it a go. Anyway, McLaren's next. And they're not doing anything. They have 2 number 1 drivers. Piastri until 2028, Norris until 2027, and they're probably going to be there or thereabouts at the front of the grid. So makes no sense for them to change. They've kind of understood that there might be issues with their drivers fighting each other, but they're fine with that. They love the kind of exposure it gives them. So why would they change that when they have the best driver pairing in F1 by quite a distance? If my calculations are true with Hamilton leaving Ferrari. So yeah, they'll keep it there. And then Red Bull, I mentioned before, don't change anything. Get some consistency back into your program, and they'll keep Verstappen and Hadjar. Verstappen's on a deal until 2028. Obviously, there are those caveats with like when he finishes in the championship, he can start moving around. I think this year it might have been 2nd or 3rd. Well, 2025 might have been 2nd or 3rd. Obviously, he did that. I'm not sure what it is for 2026, but I imagine they'll encourage him to stay around. The other top teams aren't going to be taking him on because McLaren, they have their top 2 drivers. They're probably not going to bring in Verstappen. Mercedes, they might consider it, But you have George Russell, who looks great and was great last season, and Antonelli, who is the next Verstappen. So why would you break that to bring in someone who might not be committed to the long-term career in F1? We know he's got other interests. We know he's got not a lot of hype around the media and the marketability. So yeah, I think they'll keep Verstappen at Red Bull because they give him the lifestyle that he wants, in terms of being able to spend time with his family, being able to time to do other fun things like WEC and IndyCar and GT racing, and also Hedjar, who looked great last season, got that podium in the RB team, got promoted. I think Lauren Meckes will give him enough time. That will be able to convince the board to give him enough time, because they will say, well, who else are we going to grab? Are we going to go outside the Red Bull program? We've seen that Red Bull don't like going outside their program. So, yeah, I think that will be the grid. Let's just go through it one more time. Cadillac, Perez, Contenhurter, Alpine, Gasly, Fornaroli, Aston Martin, Tsunoda, Stroll, Audi, Bortoleto, Hockenberg, Haas, Ocon, Kamara, RB, Lawson and Lundblad, Williams, Albon and Sainz, Mercedes, Russell and Antonelli, Ferrari, Leclerc and Behrman, McLaren, Norris and Piastri, and Red Bull, Verstappen and Hadjar. Let me know what you disagree with and agree with down in the comments below. Thank you for watching for always. Peace.